Think back to the last test you studied for. You reread the page 4 times. You still forgot half of it by morning. Now picture someone else. They read that same page once. They close their eyes. They see it. Every word sits there in perfect focus. You have heard of people like this. You have probably wished your brain worked that way. Here is the strange part. That version of photographic memory has never once been proven real. Not in one verified case. Not in over 100 years of trying. What actually exists is stranger than that. It is rarer, too. It says more about your own mind than you think. By the end of this, you will understand something important. What your brain does every time you try to remember. And why forgetting might be the smartest thing it does. Before we go further, one quick thing. If this kind of question grabs you, stick around. The kind that changes how you see your own mind. This channel exists for people like that. People who ask why their own mind works the way it does. People who want to understand themselves a little better every single week. That is the only reason we make these videos, and honestly, the only reason worth making them at all. Let's start with the claim itself. Somewhere you picked up an idea. 1 in 10,000 people can remember anything they see, permanently, in full detail, like a camera storing a photo. Maybe you read it in a listicle. Maybe a friend swore their cousin had it. That number sounds oddly specific. Specific numbers feel like facts. But nobody can trace that number anywhere. No named researcher published it. No journal produced it. It spread the way most viral facts spread. Repeated so many times it started sounding true. So if the number is fake, what is real? Something like this does exist. It is just not what you think. In the 1960s, a psychologist named Ralph Haber ran experiments. At the University of Rochester, he was not testing adults, he was testing children. Haber showed kids a picture for about 30 seconds. Then he took it away. He asked them to describe it, as if it were still there. A small group of these children could do something remarkable, somewhere between 2 and 10%. They described the image with startling accuracy. Some could even move their eyes across empty space. They scanned details that were no longer there. Researchers called this eidetic imagery. For a moment, it looked like real proof. Watch what happens next. Here is the twist inside the twist. That ability does not last. As these children moved into adolescence, almost all of them lost it. Not a slow fade, a near total loss. By adulthood, the vivid images were gone. Whatever was happening in their young brains simply stopped. Sit with that for a second. If photographic memory were a fixed trait, it should not vanish on schedule. That is not how permanent traits behave. That is how a developmental window behaves. It opens, then it closes. Think about your own childhood. Do you remember a smell or a room more vividly than something from 6 months ago? There is a reason for that. It connects directly to what Haber found. Young brains process the world differently. They lean harder on raw sensory detail. Language and abstract thinking have not fully taken over yet. As you grow, your brain shifts strategy. It compresses experience into words and categories. You trade vividness for efficiency. That trade is happening in your head right now, every single day, whether you notice it or not. Now here is where the story gets its most famous name, and its most controversial case. In 1970, a Harvard researcher named Charles Strohmeyer published a study. It was about a woman known only as Elizabeth. She could look at one random dot pattern with one eye. Then, days later, look at a second pattern with the other eye. According to the study, she fused the two together in her mind. She built a single three-dimensional image out of both. If true, this was staggering. It would mean her visual memory worked like a physical photograph, stored somewhere in her brain with pixel-level precision. For years, her case was cited as the strongest proof around. proof that adult photographic memory was real. Then the story falls apart. Elizabeth never agreed to be tested again. Not once. No independent lab ever replicated the results. Some researchers later questioned whether Strohmeyer gave her unintentional cues. Others pointed to a personal relationship that complicated the study. Nobody can say for certain what actually happened in that room. Sit with that for a moment. The single most cited proof of adult photographic memory is unrepeated. An entire belief, repeated for 50 years, rests on one experiment. One experiment involving one person. A person who disappeared from science entirely. This is usually where the story ends with a shrug. Maybe it's real, maybe it isn't. But your brain is not that simple. And neither is the real explanation. What if the reason nobody can prove it exists is simple? Memory does not work like a camera at all. Not for anyone. Not even for you. Think about the last time you gave someone directions to your own house. You did not describe every crack in the sidewalk. You did not mention every parked car along the way. You gave the shape of the route, the turns that mattered, the landmark near the end. Your brain does the same thing with everything you experience. It keeps the shape, it drops the noise. That is not a flaw in the system. That is the entire point of the system. Here is what is actually happening inside your skull. Every time you remember something, your brain does not pull up a file. It does not work like a computer opening a photo. It reconstructs the memory, piece by piece. Almost like rebuilding a scene from scattered notes. Every time you recall something, you are not replaying it. You are regenerating it. Every regeneration introduces small changes. This is why even Haber's eidetic children made errors. Some described details that were never actually in the picture. Their brains were not projecting a stored photograph. They were reconstructing one. Reconstruction always leaves room for error. This matters for you, right now, today. Think about an argument you had last year. You probably remember exactly what was said. So does the other person. Yet your two versions rarely match. That is not because one of you is lying. Both of you reconstructed that memory separately. Reconstruction is never identical twice. Your brain is not a filing cabinet. It is closer to a sculptor. It rebuilds the same statue slightly differently. Every single time you ask to see it. There is a study that makes this even more personal. Honestly, a little uncomfortable too. In 2017, 3 researchers ran an experiment. Alexandra Barash, Kristen Deal, and Jackie Silverman. They studied something specific. What happens when you photograph an experience instead of just living it? Their findings were almost paradoxical. Taking a photo improved memory for visual details, but it damaged memory for everything else, especially sound. The moment you raised your phone to capture a sunset, something happened quietly. Your brain outsourced part of the remembering to the device. You got a sharper image and a blurrier experience. Your phone did not just record the moment. It changed what your own brain chose to keep. Think about how many moments you have handed over like that. Weddings. Vacations. Your kids' first steps. Every time you reached for your phone instead of just watching, you made a quiet trade. You did not even know you were making it. This is not a lecture about putting your phone down, although maybe it should be. It is proof that memory is not fixed. It is shaped, in real time, by what you do while the moment is happening. If you are noticing how much of your life runs on autopilot like this, stay with me. That is exactly what this channel digs into. The small, invisible defaults your brain runs without asking you first. So if eidetic memory fades with age, and the one famous adult case was never confirmed, and even normal memory is a reconstruction, not a recording, then what about the people who really do seem to remember everything? Because they exist. You may have seen them on a talk show, reciting thousands of digits of pi, naming the day of the week for any date thrown at them. This is where the story takes its most important turn. There is a real, documented condition. It is called highly superior autobiographical memory. One of the most studied cases is a woman named Jill Price. Researchers at the University of California, Irvine, first examined her. This was back in the 2000s. Give Jill Price any date from her adult life. She can tell you what day it was, what she did, what was in the news that day. Her memory for her own life is extraordinary and well documented. But here is the detail almost nobody mentions. Jill Price is average, sometimes below average, at other things. At remembering things unrelated to her own life. Random lists, unrelated facts, numbers, with no personal meaning. Her ability is not a camera in her brain. It is an unusually strong link between memory and self. She does not photograph the world. She obsessively narrates her own life. That narration sticks in a way most people's does not. There is another famous case worth knowing. A Russian journalist known simply as S. He was studied for decades by the psychologist Alexander Luria. S. could recall staggering lists of numbers and words, sometimes years later, without a single error. But his gift came bundled with a cost. His senses blurred into each other. Sounds produced colors. Tastes produced shapes. Doctors call this synesthesia. That blending is likely what made his memory so sticky. Every piece of information landed with extra sensory hooks attached. It was not a clean photographic snapshot at all. It was an overloaded, tangled web of associations. Luria's notes describe a man who struggled with something simple, plain abstract thinking, because every word triggered a flood of unwanted images he could not switch off. There is one more name worth knowing here. Kim Peek, the real inspiration behind the film Rain Man. Peek could read 2 pages at once, 1 page with each eye. He recalled almost everything he ever read, for the rest of his life. Doctors later found he was born without the structure connecting the 2 halves of his brain. His memory was not a gift chosen for him. It came bundled with severe difficulty handling ordinary daily tasks, things you do without a second thought. Every documented case that comes close to photographic memory carries a cost like this. None of them are the clean, effortless superpower shown in movies. There is also a simpler reason none of this should surprise you. Your visual system was never built for storage. It was built for prediction. Your eyes send your brain a rough, patchy stream of signals, full of gaps, blind spots, and constant flicker. Your brain fills in the missing pieces instantly. It guesses, based on patterns it has seen before. That guessing feels seamless to you. It feels like a clear, continuous picture of the world. But it is closer to a rough sketch, redrawn constantly. A camera does not guess. A camera does not fill gaps with assumptions. Your brain does that every single second you are awake. Storing a perfect photograph was never the goal. Predicting what happens next always was. This is also why eyewitness testimony fails so often in courtrooms. Researchers like Elizabeth Loftus have spent decades studying this exact gap. Loftus found that simply changing the wording of a question can shift what someone remembers seeing. Ask someone how fast 2 cars smashed into each other. They will estimate a higher speed. Ask the same person how fast the cars merely contacted each other. They estimate a lower speed. Same accident. Same witness. Different memory. Built by a single word choice. If your brain stored true photographs, wording would not matter at all. The image would simply be the image. It isn't, because there was never a photograph there to begin with. Only a reconstruction, waiting to be shaped by whatever question came next. Now compare all of that to memory champions. The people who memorize a shuffled deck of cards in under a minute. Researchers have scanned their brains. You might expect something dramatic. Instead, their brains are structurally similar to yours. What is different is technique. Almost every memory champion uses one specific method. It dates back over 2,000 years. It is sometimes called the method of loci. You place information along a familiar mental path, like the rooms in a house you know well. They are not seeing photographs in their minds. They are building deliberate stories and spatial journeys, then walking through them on command. It is a trained skill, the same way you would train a muscle, not a gift some people are simply born with. This is the part worth sitting with. The people who seem to have photographic memory are not remembering more accurately than you. They are remembering more strategically than you. There is no evidence anywhere of a brain that stores the world like a hard drive. What separates a memory champion from you is not hardware. It is a set of learnable habits your school probably never taught you. So why does your own memory feel so unreliable? Why do you forget where you put your keys minutes after setting them down? Here is the part that might change how you feel. Forgetting is not a malfunction. It is a feature your brain runs on purpose. A brain that remembered every detail of every day would be paralyzed by noise. There is a rare condition called hyperthymesia. It overlaps with cases like Jill Price's. People with it remember almost everything about their own lives, in overwhelming, relentless detail. Many describe it as exhausting, not magical. Some say they cannot stop replaying old pain, the way most people simply let it fade with time. Total recall is not a hidden superpower waiting to be unlocked. For the few people who actually have something close to it, the experience is different. It often feels less like a gift and more like a burden they never asked for. Your forgetting is doing something for you. It clears space. It lets old pain soften, instead of staying sharp forever. It lets you focus on today, instead of drowning in every detail of every yesterday. The thing you have treated as a flaw your whole life deserves a second look. It makes you feel less impressive than the person who never forgets anything. But it might be one of the most useful functions your brain performs. Here's a small thing worth trying this week. Next time you need to remember something important, do not just reread it. Try building a mental path instead, the way memory champions actually do it. Walk through a place you know well in your mind. Set each fact down in a different room. Your kitchen for one idea, your hallway for the next. It sounds strange the first time you try it. It works far better than rereading ever will. That single shift is the closest thing to a real trick this whole topic offers you. If videos like this are useful to you, stick around for more. The ones that quietly rewire how you see your own habits. That is genuinely why this channel exists. Come back next week for another one. So let's go back to that page you reread 4 times before your test. You are not broken. You are not missing some rare genetic gift. The kind 1 in 10,000 lucky people were supposedly born with. That number was never real to begin with. What you actually have is a brain built to reconstruct, not record. A brain that trades perfect accuracy for flexibility, meaning, and speed. The people who seem to remember everything are not seeing photographs behind their eyes. They are either children who will lose the ability within a few years, or one unverified case from 1970, or rare cases that carry a cost most people would never choose, or ordinary people who trained a very old, very learnable technique. Somewhere out there, a version of you studied that page 4 times, and still remembers less of it than you do right now. Somewhere else, a version of you studied it only once, using the same tricks memory champions use. That version walked into the test with the whole page sitting clearly in mind. The difference between those 2 versions of you was never about the brain you were born with. It was always about what you did with it. Next time you forget something small, a name, a date, where you left your phone, notice how quickly you call your own memory bad. Maybe it is not bad. Maybe it is doing exactly what it evolved to do, letting go of what does not matter, so it has room for what does. Sit with that the next time you close your eyes, and try to picture something you only saw once. Notice how much of it is already gone. Notice how much your mind quietly filled back in. That is not weakness. That is a brain doing exactly its job, protecting you from carrying everything at once, so you have room left for whatever actually matters to you today, and tomorrow, and every ordinary day after that.